Well, who are you?
My name is Kanan. I'm 17 years old, and I'm from Dallas, Texas.
So you must be in high school.
I got to graduate early, actually.
Wow.
You just got it done.
In a season packed with powerhouse vocals and emotional backstories, one contestant quietly stepped onto the stage and changed everything. Kanan James, a soft-spoken young man from Dallas, didn't open with flash or flair. He didn't need to. With one song, I Need Your Glory, he shifted the atmosphere, silenced the judges, and sparked a national conversation that extended far beyond the American Idol stage. But here's the thing. What audiences saw during that brief televised moment was only a sliver of the truth. Behind the scenes lies a story few know, a journey marked not by ambition, but by calling. Viewers were introduced to a contestant. What they didn't realize was they were witnessing a preacher in disguise. And the road that brought him to that moment? It's layered, powerful, and deeply spiritual. In this exclusive report, we go far beyond the spotlight to uncover the untold journey of Kanan James, the contestant who never wanted to be famous, but couldn't help being unforgettable. In tracing the story of Kanan James, it's impossible to overlook the roots that nurtured not just his voice, but his very identity. And as we investigated his upbringing in Dallas, Texas, one theme stood out above all: legacy. From a reporter's standpoint, what makes Kanan unique is not only his talent, but the spiritual and musical foundation that was laid for him long before he ever imagined auditioning for a national platform. Sources close to the family confirm that Kanan was raised in a deeply religious environment where gospel wasn't just background noise, it was the heartbeat of the home. His grandfather, a local preacher and respected gospel singer, played a pivotal role in shaping both Kanan's values and his musical direction. Church wasn't just a weekend ritual, it was a way of life. From as early as 5 years old, Kanan was immersed in Sunday morning services filled with soulful choirs and powerful sermons. And according to those familiar with his early life, he began singing not on a stage, but on the steps of that very church, learning to use music not to entertain, but to connect, inspire, and heal. What we often fail to recognize in contestants like Kanan is that behind every note lies a tradition, generations of worship, discipline, and humility passed down like scripture. While other kids his age were mimicking pop stars on the radio, Kanan was learning hymns that had been sung for decades, absorbing the essence of spiritual music that wasn't about commercial appeal, but about conviction. Conversations with community members reveal that his family never pushed him toward the spotlight. Rather, they encouraged him to find strength in stillness, to let his voice be a vessel for something higher. This approach set the tone for everything that followed in his life. When you hear Kanan sing, you're not just hearing vocal cords at work, you're hearing decades of tradition, a lineage of faith, and the echoes of a small Dallas church that taught him to see music not as performance, but as purpose. That's the story mainstream media didn't capture. The one hidden behind the harmonies and holy verses, the story of a boy molded not by the entertainment industry, but by the sacred rhythms of home. In a world where most teenagers are focused on prom dates, social media, and college admissions, Kanan James was preparing sermons and planning his future behind a pulpit. An uncommon narrative that reporters like myself rarely encounter in today's entertainment-driven youth culture. What we've uncovered about Kanan's educational journey reveals a deeper story than what American Idol ever aired. According to multiple local reports and family testimonies, Kanan made the deliberate choice to graduate high school early, not to chase stardom or skip town for a shot at fame, but because he believed his real calling was to serve in ministry. This wasn't a decision made under parental pressure or some youthful impulse. It was grounded in conviction and rooted in spiritual urgency. Kanan viewed his studies not as a finish line, but as a stepping stone to something greater. He took on an accelerated academic track, completed extra coursework, and bypassed many of the traditional rites of passage associated with high school life. Also, he could begin the next chapter of what he believed to be his divine assignment. People who've interacted with him describe a young man who exudes wisdom well beyond his years, someone who speaks not just with clarity, but with purpose. What sets him apart is not merely that he graduated early, but why he did it. In an era obsessed with fast fame and influencer culture, Kanan's decision stands in stark contrast. He wasn't chasing a record deal. He was chasing alignment with God's timing. Those who mentored him during this period, including pastors and youth leaders in Dallas, report that Canaan was already delivering messages to his peers with a level of spiritual maturity and emotional intelligence rarely seen in someone his age. He wasn't interested in competing for attention. He was preparing to carry responsibility, the kind that doesn't come with applause, but with burden. And that burden? It wasn't one of pressure, but of purpose. By the time he walked onto the Idol stage, he had already made sacrifices most of his peers wouldn't even consider, not for clout, but for calling. That early graduation was more than just a logistical milestone. It was a spiritual pivot, a quiet declaration that Kanan James wasn't waiting for the world to validate him. He was already moving in obedience to a higher plan. When Kanan James stepped onto the American Idol stage for his audition, what unfolded wasn't just another performance. It was a moment that left judges, producers, and viewers questioning what they had just witnessed. From a reporter's viewpoint, this was not business as usual for a televised singing competition. As he opened with "I Need Your Glory" by Ernest Pugh, the atmosphere shifted palpably. Unlike the typical Idol audition that aims to dazzle with vocal runs or flashy pop covers, Kanan chose a deeply spiritual gospel song unfamiliar to most mainstream audiences. That decision alone carried significant risk in a space that often favors commercial appeal over personal conviction. Yet it was precisely this sincerity that captivated the judges. Lionel Richie, a veteran performer who has seen thousands of auditions, visibly teared up, eventually rising from his seat and embracing Kanan in a moment that has since gone viral. "That was anointed," Richie said, his voice cracking with emotion. An unusual reaction for a panel known more for measured praise than spiritual affirmation. Katy Perry, known for her critical insight, sat in stunned silence, her eyes wide, while Luke Bryan appeared visibly affected, pausing before finding the words to respond. What makes this audition newsworthy is not just the vocal quality, but the authenticity that pierced through the spectacle of television. Kanan didn't audition to impress. He came to deliver a message, and in doing so, transformed a performance space into a sanctuary. For many watching at home, it didn't feel like Idol, felt like church. And in that rare convergence of faith and entertainment, Kanan James didn't just sing a song. He delivered a testimony. What American Idol aired was powerful. But what they didn't show is what makes Kanan James's journey even more compelling. As a reporter looking beneath the surface of the broadcast, it becomes clear that his decision to sing "I Need Your Glory" wasn't just a spiritual expression. It was a calculated risk that defied industry norms. In a competition where contestants often tailor their performances to fit a mainstream mold, chasing votes with top 40 hits or dramatic vocal showpieces, Kanan chose to bring worship to primetime television. That single decision flew in the face of what many contestants and even producers expect from Idol hopefuls. But this wasn't a stunt or an attempt to stand out. It was the only choice that aligned with his purpose. Interviews with those close to him suggest he never wavered on the song choice, even knowing it could alienate viewers unfamiliar with gospel music. The conviction in his voice wasn't just musical, it was theological. Kanan didn't walk into that room looking for applause. He walked in hoping to create space for reverence. And that's exactly what happened. The room didn't erupt, it quieted. There was no roar of approval, only stillness and then awe. But what viewers missed were the discussions behind the scenes. The raised eyebrows from producers wondering if a worship song would resonate. The internal debate among showrunners who knew this moment couldn't be edited like any other. Kanan forced American Idol to adapt to him, not the other way around. That's almost unheard of in this format. The show may have given him airtime, but it couldn't fully capture the weight of what he brought. His performance wasn't just countercultural, it was counter-industry. In an age where many rising artists mold themselves into brands, Kanan showed up as a vessel. That boldness, the decision to be faithful rather than fashionable, is what Idol didn't fully explore, but it's the very reason as news began to spread about Kanan James' soul-stirring audition. The ripple effect went far beyond American Idol's usual wave of social media buzz. From a reporting standpoint, what unfolded next was rare. This wasn't just a case of a clip going viral, it was a cultural pause. Within hours of the episode airing, timelines flooded with reactions not just praising Kanan's vocals, but reflecting on the spiritual weight of his presence. Hashtags like #KananJames and #INeedYourGlory trended not because of celebrity gossip or flashy drama, but because people felt something they couldn't quite explain. Viewers posted testimonies. Yes, testimonies, not just comments. I felt God through my screen, one user wrote. Another simply said, I wasn't ready to cry tonight. As a journalist, I've seen contestants break the internet with high notes, wild stories, or dramatic golden tickets. But what Canaan sparked was something deeper. Churches replayed his performance during Sunday services. Gospel blogs, Christian influencers, and even secular media outlets began discussing how a young man on a singing show managed to shift the emotional climate of an entire audience. It was as if the nation exhaled in collective recognition that something sacred had occurred. And that's not hyperbole, that's data-backed. Engagement metrics across Idol's social channels spiked disproportionately on clips involving Canaan, especially the moment Lionel Richie called him anointed. And while many Idol moments go viral and fade within a week, the conversation around Canaan has continued, often evolving into discussions about purpose, worship, and the rare power of authenticity on a commercial stage. In a landscape where content is often disposable, Canaan's audition wasn't just a highlight. It was a reference point. It reminded people of something they'd forgotten. That music at its best doesn't just entertain. It moves, it ministers, and that's exactly what happened when Kanan James walked off that stage. He didn't just leave behind applause. He left behind a moment that still echoes. Most contestants arrive at American Idol with a goal, exposure, a record deal, a shot at fame. But as we investigated Kanan James' journey, it became clear that his motives stood in stark contrast to the industry standard. According to multiple interviews and community sources, Canaan never planned to audition for Idol in the first place. In fact, by his own account, he didn't seek out the stage, it found him. What compelled him to step forward wasn't ambition, but what he describes as divine nudging. From a journalist perspective, this is a rare find, a contestant who didn't enter for personal gain, but as a response to what he believed was a spiritual assignment. He wasn't trying to be seen, he was trying to be sent. This wasn't about chasing dreams, it was about obeying direction. Those who know Canaan will say that when the opportunity arose, he wrestled with the idea. Was this platform aligned with his calling? Would it dilute his message or amplify it? In the end, he chose to move forward not because the spotlight was appealing, but because he saw the stage as a microphone for ministry. And when you rewatch his audition through that lens, everything changes. The stillness, the sincerity, the unapologetic faith. It wasn't performance polish. It was spiritual posture. Idol producers may have seen another gospel-leaning hopeful, but what they got was a preacher with a mic. And viewers picked up on it instantly. Comments poured in asking, who is this guy really? What church does he go to? Where can I hear more? That's not typical fanfare, it's hunger. Canaan didn't just sing. He sparked curiosity about something far greater than himself. And that's because, in his mind, Idol was never the destination. It was simply a tool, a temporary pulpit to reach hearts beyond the walls of his local church. And when he walked onto that stage, he wasn't stepping into the industry. He was stepping into obedience. When Kanan James received the final platinum ticket of the season on American Idol, it was a moment of celebration for viewers. But upon closer investigation, it becomes evident that this recognition carried a deeper, more personal weight for the contestant himself. As a news reporter following his journey, it's important to recognize that for most Idol hopefuls, the platinum ticket is a strategic advantage. It offers early access to Hollywood Week and a psychological edge over the competition. But for Canaan, the ticket symbolized something far greater, confirmation. Not confirmation of talent, which he clearly possessed, but of purpose. In that moment, surrounded by cameras, judges, and stage lights, Canaan stood not as a performer being validated by a panel of celebrities, but as a young man whose decision to follow a quiet, internal calling had been divinely affirmed. Lionel Richie's reaction encapsulated the magnitude of what had just occurred. Rising to his feet, walking across the stage, and embracing Canaan with a warmth that felt more pastoral than performative. That was anointed, he declared, and in doing so named what so many felt but couldn't articulate. The word anointed doesn't just mean talented. It implies chosen, set apart, spiritually empowered. Katy Perry and Luke Bryan echoed that sentiment with stunned reverence. acknowledging not just Canon's vocal strength, but the sacredness of the moment they had all just witnessed. But what the show didn't explicitly explain was how unusual it is for such a deeply spiritual, non-commercial performance to garner unanimous praise and a platinum ticket. Kanan didn't conform to the Idol blueprint. He disrupted it. He didn't adjust his sound to fit the stage. He brought the stage into alignment with his sound. And that's precisely why this ticket wasn't a reward. It was a revelation. It revealed to a national audience what his community already knew, that Kanan James is not just a gifted singer, but a vessel of something far beyond entertainment. The platinum ticket then became more than a fast track to the next round. It was a symbolic seal, a rare moment in pop culture where purpose, talent, and timing converge, and a confirmation that sometimes the industry can recognize authenticity when it walks in unannounced and leaves the room transformed. Now that the dust has settled from Kanan James' unforgettable audition and his platinum ticket moment, the question on many minds is, what comes next? From a journalist standpoint, this is where the story becomes even more intriguing. Most American Idol contestants follow a familiar trajectory: tour appearances, album deals, social media campaigns. But with Kanan, that path isn't guaranteed, and perhaps it was never even the plan. Those close to him, including faith leaders and family members, suggest that Kanan has always viewed opportunities through a very specific lens, one of spiritual alignment. Every stage, every microphone, every spotlight is weighed against a singular question: does this serve the message God has called me to carry? That means if Idol opens doors that conflict with his calling, he might very well walk away from them. This isn't speculation, it's a pattern. Even before his audition, Kanan made unconventional choices guided not by ambition, but by obedience. He graduated early not to chase success, but to step into ministry. He sang a worship song on national television not to go viral, but to minister. So now, with the spotlight glaring and expectations rising, he's faced with a decision that most in the industry would see as a no-brainer. But for Kanan, fame has never been the goal. Ministry is, and if continuing on the Idol path becomes a distraction from that, he has the resolve to walk away, gracefully, unapologetically. Sources indicate that he's already begun weighing potential collaborations, not based on clout, but on content. Who will let him sing his truth unfiltered, who will honor his desire to keep the message at the center, not the market. And for those wondering if we'll see a full-length album or a tour, the answer is unclear. But what is clear is that whatever Kanan does next, it will be intentional. Whether that next step leads to a pulpit, a gospel album, or a global ministry, one thing is certain: Kanan James isn't just charting a career, he's following a calling. And in an industry where the next move is usually driven by momentum, his will be driven by meaning. In wrapping up the story of Kanan James, what becomes undeniably clear, even from a journalist perspective, is that this was never just about a contestant with a beautiful voice. It was about a young man who used a national stage to deliver something far more enduring than a song. As reporters, we're trained to look past the headlines and into the heart of the story. And in Kanan's case, that heart is faith. When the camera stopped rolling and the applause faded, what remained wasn't just a viral clip or a trending moment, but a testimony that resonated far beyond the reach of television. Kanan brought to American Idol something the show didn't quite know how to frame: stillness, sincerity, and a spiritual authority that can't be manufactured in a recording booth. From his early days in his grandfather's church to the moment he chose "I Need Your Glory" over a chart-topping hit, Kanan has been guided by a purpose that defies industry logic. In a season built on flash and flare, he reminded millions that music can still be sacred, that authenticity can still cut through noise, and that sometimes the most powerful artist in the room isn't the loudest, but the truest. His journey stands as a quiet revolution against the pressures of performance culture, proving that a song sung with conviction can move more hearts than a dozen rehearsed routines. For viewers, Kanan was a breath of fresh air. For the